Well, at least we've driven up the wages of those who are prepared to put their names to the shameful Israeli propaganda. Thousands of pounds you get now for tweeting or posting in support of Benjamin Netanyahu and the genocide in Gaza, up to £7,000 per tweet if you're one of the chosen people. But the rest of the world can see all too clearly what is happening. If reports are to be believed, even in the White House, even in the febrile brain of Donald J. Trump, the rest of the world can see the famine, can see the genocide, and can see the rank injustice, atrocities that are daily, hourly committed against a captive and helpless people in the Gaza Strip, and increasingly in what they call the West Bank of the River Jordan. I remind you again, an international protectorate, although occupied now for well over half a century by the gangs of Netanyahu and his predecessors. The people of the West Bank and Gaza are living through a reign of terror, as the rest of the world can plainly see. Only on the Bill Maher show can you raise a laugh anymore about dead babies in Gaza. But let me start with the Flotilla. You know, I've been thinking over the last half hour, I now know how it was that in the famous, infamous Milgram experiment, that people were prepared to keep on turning the dial when told by men in white coats, even though they thought they were inflicting excruciating electronic shocks on the people that were being subject to the experiment. I just blocked someone who said that Yvonne Ridley will probably be all right, but she was illegally trying to enter someone's country. Therefore, are people still out there that think that Gaza belongs to Israel, that think that entering Gaza is entering Israel illegally, that thinks that seizing people in international waters is some kind of crime on the part of the people in the international waters. People who don't understand that nobody can arrest someone. No arrest warrant can be valid. No one can legally seize people in international waters. There are still people stupid enough or wicked enough to believe this kind of propaganda, but it is a vanishing few. The truth is, as I said, more or less everybody can now see what's happening. A large group of people, 500 of them, from European Union, Britain, and North American countries, as well as people from the Far East and beyond, sought to deliver nappies, sought to deliver baby formula to people who are suffering a famine. They had every legal right to do so, and in fact, their governments had an international legal obligation themselves to do so, though none of them have. And even the countries that said they were dispatching their warships to look after their nationals on the flotilla turned turtle and ran away as the Israeli gunboats approached. And so the people were successfully seized. They were taken to the Etzion prison in the desert, where the scorpions don't all have 4 legs, some of them have 2, and they were then subjected to brutal torture, including, and perhaps particularly, those who have the highest profile in the world. Greta Thunberg, just a matter of months ago, was everyone's favourite daughter-in-law, was everyone's favourite at middle-class liberal dinner tables. Greta Thunberg is a Swedish citizen, probably, and in fact certainly, the most famous 22-year-old girl, young woman in the entire world. But she is being tortured right now by a state of Israel keen to show that they share our values, that they are people like us, that indeed they are the last rampart of people like us who share our values. A state which claims it is the embodiment of Judeo-Christian values. They are torturing 22-year-old Greta Thunberg in front of all the other prisoners, torturing her, forcing her to kiss the Israeli flag and drape it around her, subjecting her to the filthiest water, making her ill and sick, making prisoners drink from the toilet bowl. Every fascist playbook maneuver is being imposed on British, French members of Parliament, 4 of them. And Macron has said and done nothing about it. Irish people, members of the Irish Parliament, and Taig Hickey, one of the most famous Irish men in the world, tortured, seized illegally, held illegally, and tortured. Now, what does that say about Israel? Well, you can make up your own mind. I know what mine is. But what does it say about the country whose nationals these people are? What kind of ally do you have that will subject your nationals, having seized them illegally, to such brutal, cruel, humiliating, degrading, and sick-making treatment? People have had their legs broken. A woman of 70 from my own country of Scotland, from Glasgow, which I represented in Parliament for decades and hope to do so one day again. 70 years old woman with a broken leg. They slammed a door on her broken leg. If that's what they do to famous foreigners, what do you think they do to Palestinians on a day and daily basis? I'll let you think about that. But to the big picture. The big picture being the big breakthrough boasted by Donald Trump and the White House when he proffered a peace plan, which wasn't the peace plan he'd agreed with the Arab and Muslim countries in New York, but a Trump peace plan, which down the road envisages Jared Kushner's Gaza Riviera, bordellos, casinos, condominiums, and of course the ubiquitous Trump Tower. But I was actually only interested not in down the line, but right now. Will it stop the bombing? Will it stop the slaughter? And for a moment, it looked as if it might. Trump said that Netanyahu must stop the bombing immediately. Apart from anything else, how can you produce the captives and the deceased captives whose remains are in Gaza? How can you hand them over in one go, as Trump demanded, when there are bombs literally falling every other minute of the day, massacring people? Nearly 100 massacred in the last 24 hours, most of them children. I've seen them. Mr. Van, whatever your name is, Mr. Bill Maher. I didn't laugh. I didn't find it funny in the least to see little dead boys lying beside the bodies of their decapitated fathers, to see mothers torn to pieces. I didn't find it funny, unlike Maher and Friedman and the black guy collaborating with them. And the audience, live audience, oh, how they laughed. I didn't find it remotely funny. In fact, I found it so nauseating and repugnant, I could scarcely look at it. But I always make myself look at it. And that's just the last 24 hours when Trump ordered Netanyahu to cease the bombardment immediately. Well, it depends what you mean by bombardment, and it depends what you mean by immediately, because Trump has not said a word since he gave that order. In fact, he removed his post in which he ordered it off Truth Social, where he had posted it. And now the whole thing is up in the air. They keep saying, Rubio just said, Hamas must leave power. What power? Power where? In Gaza? There's hardly 2 bricks still resting upon each other. The people are in concentration camps, or they are dead or about to be dead. There's no government in Gaza. Nobody's in power, you idiot. Well, I don't know what's going to happen in the next hours. The Palestinian resistance have said they are ready to give up their weapons to a Palestinian body which will not be the Palestine Authority, recognized by the whole world, including the United States. The nonagenarian Abbas, it won't be him. He's not trusted to do it. It will be a technocratic body of Palestinians and Egyptians and other Arab officials. So the resistance are ready to give up their weapons. They're ready to hand them over. They are not in power. There is nobody in power. What are you waiting for? Well, of course, the suspicion arises that Netanyahu either never got the order from Donald Trump or knows it isn't an order, knows that it is a public relations maneuver to receive all the captives and the deceased Israelis taken on October 7th, and then to redouble the war on a then totally unarmed, disarmed Palestinian population. That's my bet. That's my guess as to what the game is. And now, in the time left available to me, to turn to matters closer at home. Incidentally, I should tell you that on day 8, since the events at Gatwick Airport, Gayatri and I are still without our computers, still without our phones, still in a black hole. As the leader of a British political party, I am no longer in communication with the fellow members of the leadership of the Workers' Party of Britain, because I've now been blocked on Telegram, who tell me that my account is frozen, so I cannot speak to the members of the leadership of my own party about my election campaign with Yvonne Ridley in Glasgow in the Scottish Parliament elections rapidly coming towards us. But there's far worse things afoot. Shabana Mahmood, who I believe ordered the stop on Gayatri and me at Gatwick Airport, certainly nothing like that had ever happened before, and happened as soon as she became the Home Secretary. Shabana Mahmood on television today has announced new powers for the police to ban protests and ban demonstrations in Britain. The very protests, the very demonstrations that she herself used to regularly partake of. And the proximate reason given is that some unhinged, deranged, fanatic, extremist, lunatic by the name of Jihad al-Shami, literally, a jihad of the Levant, of Bilad al-Sham, of Syria, Lebanon, Palestine. That was his name. Suspicious, huh? Entered the grounds of a synagogue in Manchester and murdered one person. The other person who tragically died at that synagogue was shot by the police, as were others shot by the police. This lunatic who entered a synagogue on Yom Kippur wearing a fake suicide vest around his waist was killed quite properly by the police. How could they know that the suicide vest was a fake? But he didn't have a gun. He had a knife, and he knifed people, including one of them to death, almost as if he was doing Israel a favor, right? Who, other than a deranged, fanatic, lunatic, would think at this time, on that holy day, when the whole world is rising up against Israel, to carry out such a vile, reprehensible, repugnant act? If he wasn't working for Israel, he should have been, because the only interest he served was theirs. May he rot in hell for eternity for the crime that he committed. But the idea that the British people should sacrifice their ancient liberties because of the actions of one person killing one other person in a synagogue, that we should give up our right to protest about the massacre of hundreds of thousands of people now in Gaza, men, women, and children, is too ridiculous for words, or once upon a time it would have been too ridiculous for words. But that's what Keir Starmer's government has in store for us. So Britain is rapidly marching, I mean at the double, down the road in the direction of dictatorship, in the direction of tyranny, in the direction of fascism. What will it be next? Will I no longer be able to speak to a camera in my own country? Will Britain's most popular political show by a country mile next be unavailable? Well, we can only speculate about that. And we have backup plans were that to happen. But the fact that I'm even contemplating this is as fantastical as that I, a 7-time elected member of Parliament, would be stopped by armed anti-terrorist police under the Terrorism Act at a British airport. That's how fast we're going down the rabbit hole. We've got Max Blumenthal, the doyen of American journalists, a prince amongst men, coming up right after this. Stay tuned.